Hey everyone, and welcome back to Be Like Christ. We're talking about Acts chapter 6 today in 5 minutes. This is, I think, the shortest chapter in the book of Acts. Now this is part of our bigger study through the book of Acts. We're doing a verse-by-verse study. It was supposed to start tomorrow, September the 12th. However, I'm helping my wife finish up a big project of hers for her business, and so we're going to push it back one more week. So what would that be? Maybe the 19th, I think, if I can do math. It's always in question. Anyway, the 19th or whatever next Monday is, then we will start the big study. So I'm sorry for the delay, but gotta help my wife. That's part of my duties. All right, let's talk about Acts chapter 6. When did the events of Acts chapter 6 take place? Well, as with a lot of these early church dates, we don't have exact years, but most historians place it somewhere between like 31 and through 35 AD. We don't have a lot of characters here. We've got the 12 apostles who have been featured in many of the chapters so far. They were the hand-selected men who Jesus had chosen to help lead the early church. We've got 7 men. Now, these 7 men were selected specifically to take care of a unique problem amongst the Christian widows, which we'll talk about in a second. And then a guy named Stephen. He was actually one of the 7 men, and he is highlighted as a man who is full of faith and of the Holy Spirit. Where do the events of chapter 6 take place? Well, surprise, surprise, we're in the exact same place we've been in for all of the book of Acts so far. We are in the city of Jerusalem. But don't worry, we are not too far away from getting out of Jerusalem and taking the gospel out throughout the world. And now for our outline of the chapter. I've only got 2 sections here. Verses 1 through 7, we've got 7 men chosen to care for the neglected Christian widows. So a group known as the Hellenists, these were probably Jews who lived in Greek areas of the world and were affected by Greek culture. They came to the church and they said that their widows were being neglected by the church in the church's handouts of charity. The 12 apostles heard this complaint. They decided that they really needed to make preaching the gospel their priority. And they didn't want to distract themselves by what they called serving tables. But that didn't mean that they weren't going to help with the problem. They told all the disciples who had gathered to pick 7 men. And those 7 men were going to devote themselves to making sure that the Hellenist widows were taken care of just like everybody else. So the disciples, they chose 7 good men, and the apostles laid their hands on them and blessed them, and then they went to work. And then our second section, verses 8 through 15, Stephen is arrested and he's brought before the council. Stephen was one of those 7 who was selected to help with the widow problem, but he was also a pretty powerful preacher, and he was doing signs and wonders, and he was disputing with some individuals about whether or not Jesus really was the Christ. A list of those individuals is given. There were some people from the synagogue of the freedmen, Cyrenians, Alexandrians, those of Cilicia and Asia. They all came up and wanted to debate Stephen, but Stephen was a pretty powerful debater thanks to the help of the Holy Spirit, and his enemies couldn't overcome him in debate or in logic, so instead they did something dishonest. They got some false witnesses to come and to say that Stephen was speaking blasphemous words against Moses and God. They stirred up all the people, and the elders and the scribes, they arrested Stephen and they brought him before the Jewish council. Additional false witnesses were brought in and accused Stephen of speaking against the law of Moses and against the temple. These false witnesses told the council that Stephen was preaching that Jesus was going to destroy the temple and he was going to change the customs that Moses had given to the Jews. And the chapter kind of concludes in an interesting way. We don't have a resolution here yet. That'll come in the next chapter. But there's an interesting statement. It says, all of those who saw Stephen's face, who were sitting in the council, they saw it as the face of an angel. There's not really any more commentary given on that fact. It's just stated, and then Luke moves on into chapter 7. And I've got 2 applications from this chapter. The church can and should be involved in a lot of charitable activity. But we can never allow that charitable activity to replace our priority of preaching Jesus. Charity opens a lot of doors for the gospel, but charity that's devoid of Jesus is of no eternal value. And the apostles' resolve at the beginning of this chapter to continue preaching the gospel should communicate the importance of that priority even for the modern church. And then finally, it is not right or healthy to try to bear all of the responsibility in a church individually. Trying to fill too many roles can distract us from completing our individual responsibilities. The apostles knew this and they delegated accordingly. And additionally, trying to fill too many roles ourselves, or just have a few people fill all of the roles, that deprives other people of opportunities to serve and to grow.